Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Kulewski, and today I will be sharing insights on how urban and rural dynamics influence various economic indicators and what this means for policy and business strategies. Today's presentation will be covering all of the following topics. The importance of analyzing urban and rural dynamics in economic planning cannot be overstated. Urban and rural areas are deeply interconnected, and their development impacts and the overall economic stability and growth of a nation. Understanding these dynamics helps in creating balanced development strategies that cater to both urban and rural populations, ensuring inclusive growth. Urban areas are often the engines of economic growth as they generate the majority of a country's GDP, serve as centers of innovation, and connect regions to the global economy. The shift from rural to urban living has historically been associated with economic development, as urban areas offer more diverse employment opportunities, better infrastructure, and higher productivity levels. Cities provide agglomeration economies where businesses and workers benefit from being close to each other, leading to higher wages and productivity. However, urbanization also brings challenges, such as an increased pressure on infrastructure, housing, and services. Poorly planned urbanization can lead to congestion, pollution, and socioeconomic disparities. On the other hand, rural areas often face issues like lower investment in infrastructure, limited access to services, and slower economic growth. Effective economic planning must address these challenges by integrating urban and rural development strategies. For policymakers, understanding the urban rural interface is crucial for creating policies that promote balanced regional development, as investments in urban areas should not neglect the needs of rural regions. Strategies such as improving rural infrastructure, enhancing connectivity between urban and rural areas, and fostering rural industries can help bridge the development gap. Policymakers need to ensure that urban growth does not come at the expense of rural stagnation, but rather that both areas can develop symbiotically. Business leaders also benefit from this understanding, as it allows them to identify growth opportunities in both urban and rural markets. Businesses can leverage the unique advantages of each area, such as the consumer base in cities and the raw materials and space in rural regions. Additionally, investing in rural areas can open new markets and contribute to sustainable development goals. Regarding the data, we ensured that all of it was obtained from various reputable and reliable sources to maintain accuracy and integrity. While data cleaning, we found no missing values in any of the data collected and also made sure to identify and examine any outliers that could potentially skew our results. Additionally, consistency checks were performed to ensure that the data was logically sound. It is important to note that the data we use might not be the most current available overall, as certain datasets were collected more recently than others. Moreover, economic indicators can change over time, and using outdated data could affect the relevance of our current analysis. There could also be potential measurement errors in the original data collection process that was beyond our control. Finally, the data might have inherent biases depending on how and where it was collected. For example, certain populations might be underrepresented in the high school education rates or income data. Here are 6 variables of interest, which I'll briefly go over in the next slides. Here we have an overview of each socioeconomic variable, as well as their accompanying histograms, which represent the distribution of said variables across the United States, providing insights into the distribution and concentration of values for each respective variable. The distributions of urban and rural populations show variability, but also hint at balanced demographic spread in some areas. This could reflect diverse living conditions and infrastructural developments across the dataset. Income inequality is relatively moderate in most regions. However, there are regions with higher Gini index values above 0.64, indicating higher inequality. High school education rates are generally high, reflecting a well-educated population. Efforts should continue to maintain and improve these rates, particularly in regions falling below the 84% mark. The left-skewed cost of living distribution towards lower cost of living indexes with fewer areas having very high costs suggests that while most of the population lives in affordability, there are pockets of significant expenses that could potentially be linked to urban centers. Finally, the distribution of homeownership rates shows moderate to high rates overall and suggests stable housing markets in many areas, but also highlights regions where homeownership is less accessible. On the next slide, we will discuss why California, New York, and Mississippi were chosen as outlier states for our analysis. The following three states exhibited extreme values in key economic indicators, making them ideal for studying the impacts of urbanization and rural dynamics. Including both California and New York allows for a comparison of how two different urban environments deal with similar challenges, such as high cost of living and income inequality, but within different economic and social contexts. Mississippi, on the other hand, serves as a contrasting example with its high rural population, lower cost of living, and lower income inequality overall. This provides a clear counterpoint to the urban examples. Moreover, by choosing states from different regions, that is, the West Coast, East Coast, and South Coast, the analysis benefits from geographic diversity, which can affect economic indicators differently. Regarding urbanization, California and New York are highly urbanized, while Mississippi is more rural. All three states have significant income inequality, with New York having the highest Gini coefficient. High school education rates are relatively high across all states. California has the highest cost of living, making it the most expensive state among the three. And finally, Mississippi has the highest homeownership rate, indicating more affordable housing. The following correlation analysis was performed to understand the relationships between urban and rural rates and various other economic indicators. The heat map displayed here illustrates these correlations, with dark red indicating a strong positive correlation of +1 and dark blue indicating a strong negative correlation of -1. Key insights from this analysis include urban population, which has a positive correlation with the cost of living index, indicating that more urbanized states tend to have higher living costs. Rural populations have a positive correlation with home ownership rates and a negative correlation with the cost of living index. This suggests that rural areas tend to have more affordable living costs and higher home ownership rates. The Gini coefficient here shows weak correlations with other variables that indicated higher inequality in more urbanized states. Finally, high school education rates are negatively correlated with urban populations and positively with rural populations, highlighting educational challenges in highly urbanized areas. Let's now delve deeper into how urbanization correlates with economic indicators like income inequality, cost of living, and education. Our analysis shows that higher urban population percentages tend to correlate with higher income inequality, higher cost of living, and lower high school education rates. These trends suggest that while urban areas might offer more economic opportunities, they also present significant challenges in terms of living costs and educational attainment. Now, on to examining how rural populations relate to these economic indicators. Our analysis here revealed that higher rural population percentages tended to correlate with lower income inequality, lower cost of living, and higher high school education rates. Here we have identified that for each variable, there is an inverse correlation when compared to the urban populations. These findings indicate that rural areas, despite having fewer economic opportunities compared to urban areas, offer more affordable living and better educational outcomes, further supporting the noticeable socioeconomic challenges and differences between the two populations. Let's now take a closer look at California, New York, and Mississippi, focusing on their unique socioeconomic characteristics in the state-wise analysis. With a high urban population of 94.2%, California experiences a high cost of living as well at 138.5 and a significant income inequality with a Gini coefficient of 0.64. The state's high level of urbanization presents challenges in terms of affordable housing and living costs. Similar to California, New York has a high urban population percentage of 87.4%, a high cost of living index at 125.9, and the highest Gini coefficient at 0.66, indicating pronounced income inequality. And these figures also highlight the economic pressures faced by residents in highly urbanized environments. In contrast, Mississippi has a high rural population percentage of 53.7%, a lower cost of living index at 86.3, and a Gini coefficient of 0.65, indicating lower income inequality overall. The state exemplifies how rural areas can offer more affordable living and lower income disparities, as mentioned before. By examining outliers such as these three states, we can see the effects of urbanization and rural dynamics in a more pronounced manner, making these implications of these dynamics easier to understand. Moreover, extreme values in outlier states can make statistical correlations more apparent and therefore more beneficial to our analysis. Before moving on to our policy recommendations, we felt it was vital to first touch on the three key variables utilized in our statewide analysis to illustrate their impacts on our findings and suggestions. Regarding urban and rural population implications and relevance are as follows. Urban areas typically require different infrastructure and services compared to rural areas. This affects economic planning, transportation, housing, and public services. Economic opportunities and challenges are also present, as urban and rural areas offer different economic opportunities and face distinct challenges, making this a crucial variable for comparison. Implications and relevance of the cost of living index. The cost of living index directly affects residents' quality of life and their ability to afford necessities such as housing, food, healthcare, and transportation. There's also economic viability at play, as this index impacts both personal and business decisions, influencing where people choose to live and work and where businesses decide to locate or expand. High income inequality can lead to social unrest and economic inefficiencies, making it a critical variable for understanding social cohesion and economic health. Reducing income inequality is often a key objective for policymakers aiming to preserve. As shown by the Gini index, in regards to the Gini coefficient, high income inequality can lead to social unrest and economic inefficiencies, making it a critical variable for understanding social cohesion and economic health. It is relevant as reducing income inequality is often a key objective for policymakers aiming to promote equitable economic growth. Together, these three variables provide a comprehensive snapshot of the socioeconomic health of a state. Urban and rural population percentages give a demographic context, while the cost of living index highlights economic pressures, and the Gini coefficient shows income distribution. Based on our analysis, here are the following policy recommendations. When it comes to addressing challenges in urbanized states, we recommend implementing policies to make housing more affordable in highly urbanized states to ease the financial burden on residents. Developing strategies to control and reduce the cost of living in urban areas are also recommended in order to make them more accessible and livable, while creating programs aimed at reducing the income disparity in urban regions through targeted social and economic policies would also be beneficial in uplifting those on the bottom of the ladder. In regards to supporting rural development, we recommend allocating resources to improve education and infrastructure in rural areas to enhance living standards and economic opportunities. It would also be beneficial to ensure that rural populations have access to high quality education facilities to improve educational outcomes and future positions in the workforce. Finally, developing initiatives to enhance living standards and create economic opportunities in rural areas would make them more attractive and sustainable for populations to move to that state. When it comes to tailored strategies for both urban and rural areas, we recommend formulating policies that balance development between both areas to ensure sustainable growth that is not at a detriment to either population in those respective states. Finally, we recommend promoting collaborations that leverage the strengths of both urban and rural regions via the input of people from both populations at a community level, which would in turn foster mutual benefits and reduce economic disparities in all regions. In conclusion, our analysis shows that urbanization and rural dynamics have distinct impacts on economic indicators. Urban areas tend to have higher costs of living and income inequality, while rural areas exhibit higher homeownership rates and lower costs of living. These findings highlight the need for tailored strategies that address the unique challenges and opportunities of both areas. Policymakers should create targeted policies that consider these dynamics and the uniqueness of both areas to achieve balanced and inclusive growth. Business leaders should in turn incorporate these insights into their strategic planning to ensure sustainable and equitable economic development and economic growth overall. Thank you for attending my presentation today. Here are all my references, and if you have any questions, please let me know.